Welcome to this week's midweek Space Startup News. As usual, I will go over space news I found on websites, blogs. You can follow us on X at Space Startup Hub, and I post links to my videos on there. So please follow if you use the X platform. And with that, let's get into the first article this week. Let's bring it up. Here it is. Put myself in the corner. This article is from science.com, and it's NASA Chief Jared Isaacman says he's fighting for Pluto. I am very much in the camp of make Pluto a planet again. And I'm also in that same camp. I think Pluto is a planet. So he's going to revisit this discussion. So NASA Chief Jared Isaacman wants to restore Pluto to its former glory. So the article goes on to say that the planet was reclassified as a dwarf planet, and many people said that ruling was unscientific and inconsistently applied. And more on that in a moment. So the IAU, that is the International Astronomical Union, defined a planet according to three newly pronounced criteria. It has to orbit the sun, be massive enough to be spherical, and clear its orbit of debris. Pluto fell short on the third count. It shares space in the distant Kuiper belt with many other dwarf planets. Earth shares orbital space with lots of asteroids, as does Jupiter. So why was Pluto singled out? So the NASA chief said, "Senator, I am very much in the camp of make Pluto a planet again. We are doing some papers right now. I think a position that we would love to escalate through the scientific community to revisit this discussion." So photos of Pluto reveal a stunning diverse world with towering mountains, vast nitrogen ice glaciers, and other jaw-dropping features, including a now famous heart-shaped landform that mission scientists called Tombau Regio. So that is the article, which I found interesting. First of all, let's have a look at Pluto, and it looks absolutely amazing. Look at all those colors. So this is a planet, or dwarf planet, that we should definitely send probes to. It looks absolutely amazing. Have a look at this chart of the solar system. You can see Pluto right over here on the right. It's quite small, and it's close to the Kuiper belt. Lots of small, icy asteroids far from the sun. So Pluto is the furthest out here, but it does cross the path of Neptune sometimes. It was excluded as a planet because there are other celestial bodies that cross its path. But that is also the case for Earth and Jupiter. So if we look at the rules again, is Pluto a planet? Pluto is a dwarf planet. It does not meet all of the criteria for planet status. So the three rules are: orbits the sun, yes; has enough mass to be round, yes; and the third rule, has cleared its orbit of debris. So that is why it's excluded as a planet, because there are other objects in its path. I asked AI about this, and I said, just look at the rule as applied and determine whether Earth is a planet. So no, Earth is not a planet based strictly on the rule as written. The sentence provided is has not cleared its neighboring region of other objects. It contains no mentions of planet mass, near planet mass, comparable size. It refers only to other objects, period. Any objects count. Cleared is not defined in the sentence. In plain English, it means removed, eliminated, or made free of. Neighboring region is not quantified or bounded in the sentence. Applying the words exactly as they stand with no added interpretation, Earth has not cleared its neighboring region of other objects. Thousands of asteroids, including Apophis, which will pass only about 32,000 kilometers from Earth's surface in 2029, closer than many satellites, remain in or repeatedly enter Earth's neighboring region. Countless small objects, dust, meteoroids, etc. also exist there. None of these have been removed or eliminated from the region. Since the rule exactly as written is satisfied by Earth, has not cleared its neighboring region of other objects, Earth does not qualify as a planet under this criteria. So as you can see, if you strictly apply the rule, many other planets, including Earth, would be disqualified as being a planet. So this rule makes no sense, and Pluto should be restored as a planet. Okay, on to our second story this week, and this is on Rocket Factory Augsburg, or RFA. So let's read the X-Post. Update: RFA has submitted its application for the Marine License for Test Flight 1 from Saxford Space. That's in Scotland. For the first time, the application also specifies a potential launch window, which will open not earlier than the 1st of July 2026, which is only in a few months. This is a legally required step for planning and a good sign of how far we've come, but it's not a launch date just yet. We applied for this window because we're working hard to be ready, and we're getting closer every day. So, the application means we're entering a new phase of preparation. Still, as with any first ever launch, there are uncertainties and the schedule may evolve. Further specific details around launch timing will be released through the appropriate channels closer to the time. We'll keep you posted. So that's the X-Post, and we have this from Saxiford Spaceport in the UK. We're hard at work supporting RFA Space as they prepare for first test flight. Further details around launch timing will be shared through the appropriate channels closer to the time. We'll keep you posted. So that is very good news. We potentially have 2 European launchers launching this summer. We have ESA Aerospace, which have been trying for several months now on the second launch attempt. So that is coming up in the next couple of months. And potentially we have RFA Space later in the year and perhaps PLD Space at the end of the year. So we have a look at this graphic. So Saxiford is at 60 degrees latitude, and this is where RFA will launch from. And Andaya is at 69 degrees latitude, and this is where ESA Aerospace have launched from and will attempt their second flight from there in a couple of months. So things are definitely picking up on the European launch scene. If we have a look at Saxiford, you can see it here. It's a very northern point in the UK on an island, so it's perfect for launch, especially for polar or high inclination launches. As you can see, there's an assembly facility here, and then on the left, you've got the actual launch pad and tower. This is the RFA facility here, and you'll have future facilities for high impulse, sky rover, maybe latitude space, and who knows. So this is RFA 1. This is the name of the rocket, and you can see it's 1,300 kilos to Sun synchronous orbit. That's a high inclination orbit, or 850 kilos to polar orbit. So basically, this is good for single satellite launches to popular orbits like Sun synchronous or polar. They also have plans in the future. They did an ESA study for a larger vehicle, a 2-stage, fully reusable, and a 3-stage semi-reusable vehicle. This is just a study. It's not something they're working towards at the moment, but I find it quite interesting. And then they also, and this is more than a study, they do intend to build a cargo vehicle. And you can see here, perhaps docking with a space station. So this is, I think it's called Argo vehicle. They're working with other companies like Atmos Space and so on. So they have a lot of hardware they're working on or working towards. So it's very exciting times. Okay, on to the next story, and this is on moon infrastructure. This is on Astroport and Vermeer collaborating to pioneer lunar iron for lunar base infrastructure. In this case, lunar iron simply means the rover, the machine. It doesn't mean extracting iron from the lunar soil. It just means the actual machine is iron. That's my take anyway. So the article talks about the development of autonomous construction machinery to aid in building a permanent human presence on the moon, which is NASA's goal. And you may be familiar with Vermeer because I mentioned it on this channel already. That is in relation to Interloon. Vermeer has an agreement with Interloon to work on a helium-3 excavator machine. Now Vermeer has another contract with another lunar infrastructure company, and that's Astroport. So it says here, Vermeer's surface mining expertise to Astroport's specialized work in robotic autonomy and lunar soil, or regolith. And they're working on the lunarization of Vermeer surface mining machinery. On the moon, there's no atmosphere, so that has implications for heating and cooling. There's very abrasive dust that's electrostatically charged. You can't just use Earth machinery on the moon without modifying it. So that's what's referred to when they mention lunarization. And it's going to use Astroport's Universal Tool Implement Payload Adapter, or UTIPA technology. So they're beginning with a surface mine application, and the team will use Astroport's technology to adjust heavy equipment's traditional reliance on mass and weight in order to operate in the moon's low-gravity environment and survive massive temperature swings and harsh lunar surface conditions. So terrestrial equipment uses mass to aid in traction, but that's not really possible on the moon because it's very expensive to put mass on the moon. You have to find other ways of anchoring the vehicle on the surface so it doesn't tip over, when it's digging into the lunar regolith. And also it has to manage the massive temperature swings from minus 170 to plus 120. Although to be fair, on the lunar south pole, the swings aren't as extreme. It's probably minus 50 to plus 50. So it goes on to say, and this is a quote from the president of Vermeer, applying our expertise in automation and heavy equipment to the lunar environment, unquote. And a quote from the Astroport founder and CEO, recent federal mandates have made it clear the US is committed to a permanent lunar presence, and that requires a robust space industry base. So they're going to dig foundations, build roads and landing pads, and provide the hardened infrastructure required for critical assets such as safe nuclear power deployment and habitation on the moon, unquote. So the goal is to develop autonomous systems to handle these dirt work essentials, including site prep and power grid protection. And for that, they're going to be using trenching technologies for lunar deployment. So rather than having lots of power cables on the surface, so astronauts will trip over it or rovers will go over the cables, the idea is you dig a trench and put the power cable into the trench and then cover it up. That also blocks any electromagnetic interference that you'd have with the cables. So Vermeer has a lot of experience with trenching tools, so they can help with that. So this work aligns with NASA's moon-based program goals to construct lunar infrastructure by 2030 and to create solutions for NASA and commercial developers who will need infrastructure to operate on the moon. So that is the article. So it's very interesting. Vermeer is kind of like the go-to company for heavy machinery to do site preparation, leveling, compacting, excavating, trenching on the moon. So they have 2 contracts now, one with Astroport and another one with Interloon. If you're not familiar with Interloon, they're working on excavating helium-3, extracting the volatiles, and sending the volatiles back to Earth for extraction with helium-3. So this is a lunarized version of Vermeer machinery that can be used for site preparation and maybe trenching and so on. So obviously a very, very impressive tool at the front here. And this looks like a Flex rover to me. So this would be Astrolab's Flex rover, and it would use Vermeer technology and an adapter by Astroport. If you look at this graphic from NASA's phased approach to the moon, the one thing I criticize them about is that I don't see a lot of infrastructure. Put myself in the corner. I can see solar panels, I can see rovers, I can see astronauts, landers, but where's the infrastructure? Where are the roads? Where are the landing pads? We need to have roads, and we need to have flat surfaces, and we need to prepare the land. But hopefully NASA is working on those kind of technologies, and Astroport will be one of those companies for sure. So let's move on to our final story this week. Okay, our final story is on Impulse Space and their Helios kick stage. So the article is called Meet Helios, Bringing Same-Day Delivery to Space, and this is on Impulse Space's website. So Tom Mueller, who was, I think, one of the first employees at SpaceX and designed the Merlin engine, he said, if you want to move through space fast, you strap a rocket engine onto something. Pretty simple, really. So the article says, the space economy needs to move far, fast, and affordably, providing same-day delivery to distant orbits for commercial, civil, and government missions. So the kick stage unlocks the orbital economy. Helios is a high-energy kick stage. 4,000 kilos of payload from low Earth orbit to geostationary orbit in less than 24 hours, flying as a payload on a medium-lift launch vehicle, so a Falcon 9 or something similar. Ignites its engines after deployment in low Earth orbit to carry satellites directly to their final orbit, and it's launch vehicle agnostic. So it could launch on upcoming medium-lift vehicles, it could launch on Ariane 6, I guess. So Helios expands the capability of any medium-lift launch vehicle it flies with, unlocking greater performance and enabling mission profiles that would otherwise require larger rockets or longer transit times. In other words, you can convert your medium-lift vehicle into a heavy-lift vehicle by adding a Helios kick stage. Because it buys you anywhere between, it gives you an extra 3 to 9 kilometers per second delta V, depending on the mass of the payload. But for very light payloads, you could get a huge extra delta V boost. Obviously, for massive payloads, it would be a lot less. and that's because it has a very efficient hydrocarbon engine. This is the guy who built the engine for Falcon 9. So it's a powerful liquid-fed rocket engine, purpose-built for high-energy missions. It uses liquid oxygen and liquid methane propellants, and it has restart capability for multi-burn missions. And down here it says, instead of waiting for limited heavy lift opportunities, operators can launch Helios on higher cadence medium lift flights. Helios delivers heavy lift performance at medium lift cost. Helios is currently progressing well through integrated testing as the team advances towards its first flights beginning in 2027. And we have a few images here. This is a render from a few years ago. And here's this brochure, whatever. It says introducing Helios flying 2026. That's now out of date. It's going to be 2027. Access any orbit. 5+ tons from low Earth orbit to geostationary orbit in under 1 day. And launch vehicle agnostic. So missions that would have been impossible on a medium lift vehicle now become possible by adding a powerful kick stage. So this can be used for satellites changing the orbit. It can also be used for orbital plane change, which is something I've been talking about very recently. You can imagine the possibilities. If you want to put something into a particular orbit, but you can't for whatever reason, including the latitude of the spaceport, adding a kick stage makes it possible. So anyway, that is all the news stories this week. So leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below on any of these news topics, and we can discuss the weekend live streams. So I read out some of the best comments and I respond to chat messages. So that'll be in the weekend. But before then, I will publish part 2 of the Earth's path to real space independence. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.